I'm actually going to read something that I wrote because I am not very good at just presenting off the cuff. But I will say that Chantel, when she called me and asked me if I would do this, I thought, of course I'm going to do this. And she talked about being authentic, and she talked about stepping into your power, and she talked about what it means to be a woman of extraordinary generosity. And I thought, okay, I could do that, I can do that. And I get very, very frightened talking, in front of crowds. And I thought, well, what can I talk about? What is it that I can talk about? I could talk about shame because I co-edited a book about shame, and I can talk about menopause because I wrote about menopause, and I could talk about a whole lot of stuff. But what I really want to talk about is making mistakes, because I'm an expert at that. And I want to talk about making mistakes and turning them into your mission. And these are not really all very funny stories, I have to tell you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from what I wrote because it's easier for me. And I hope that what I have to say inspires you to love every single bit of yourself. I believe with every ounce of me, and trust me, that's a lot of poundage. I believe that when one woman stands up and speaks her truth, her messy, complicated, gorgeous truth, it opens the heart and soul for all women to speak their truth. It breeds fierce courage. It began with one man. It began with my dad. He said, I can't make your mistakes for you. I was 15 and a half, and I dropped out of high school, and I was leaving home. And I was going to San Francisco, and then I was going to hitchhike to Oregon. And let me just say for the record that most Jewish girls from middle-class families don't drop out of high school. They have nervous breakdowns, they go on all-day shopping sprees, they would cut school, smoke pot, go to the park and make out with boys and maybe girls. And then they would go to one movie, the one movie in their local town where they would sit and watch a movie over and over and over again, because in those days we could. You could sit in a movie theater and stay all day, and you can also smoke cigarettes. My dad drove me to Kennedy Airport, where he put me on an airplane that would fly me across the country so I could meet up with a boy who would later break my heart in many pieces. He drove me from our home on Long Island, where my mother stood on the porch. Her hair was coiffed perfectly. Her lashes were coated with mascara, and a cigarette was dangling from her lips. She stood and for many, many minutes did not say a word. And I said, okay, bye, Mom, I'm leaving. And my dad and I got in the car and we drove away. And any and all car trips back then consisted of either playing a game show like the Match Game or singing show tunes. And on this particular day, driving to the airport, Fiddler on the Roof was the show my dad chose to sing. If I Were a Rich Man seemed very moving as I was embarking on a life change experience. I would have preferred he sang the Grateful Dead or Laura Nyro, but my father was much more of a show tune aficionado. I could tell you right now, as he drove me to the airport on that day, while he didn't say it, he knew I was making a huge mistake, and he was not happy. He was tense and scared and worried and held my left hand with his right hand while he gripped the bottom of the steering wheel with his left hand. I was at a stage in my 15-and-a-half-year life where breathing felt like a chore. I was so miserable and so unhappy, and I felt so alone in the world. And I would wager many of you here felt that at one point in your life. And I was running with a very bad crowd, and I was acting out in all sorts of self-loathing ways. I will spare you the details, but suffice it to say that there was a time in my life where being bad and feeling bad was really bad. And so I quit high school and I decided to tag along to a commune with a boy who I made out with in the back seat of my car. where we kissed so long and so hard, our lips cracked and bled. But I wasn't his girlfriend, and he was not my boyfriend. He said, I don't like you in that way. I like you plenty, but you know, not as a girlfriend. I don't love you. I mean, I'm not, you know, in love with you. But I said yes. And I quit high school, and I stopped straightening my hair, and I stopped shaving my legs, and I swore that I would never go to Orbax again. And I hitchhiked from San Francisco to Oregon with him. And I spent a night at a very scary, dirty, creepy motel. And I decided in that moment that this was really bad. My dad left me at the gate while my knapsack was making its way to the plane by way of the conveyor belt. My peasant skirt dragging on the floor, my hair curly and unruly. He handed me a couple of $100 and said, please, our secret. I smiled and I kissed him and I hugged him so tight I could feel his heart breaking. I can't make your mistakes for you, he said, and then turned and walked away. Holy shit. I can't make your mistakes for you. And the mistakes piled up. There was the pregnancy. I was a desperate young woman, child, and I used that pregnancy as a weapon to try and get the boy to love me, to want me. I sat all alone in an abortion clinic, and after the procedure, I was in a room with 10 other girls who had just had abortions. And I can tell you right now with complete conviction that none of us felt good about what had just happened. None of us. And I would go so far as to bet none of us ended up or stayed with the boy that we had had sex with that got us pregnant. Because none of us in that room on that day understood or believed at that stage in our lives how vital and necessary it was to love the whole of ourselves, to honor our whole self. I was young and I had no self-worth whatsoever. Self-esteem was so out of reach for me, I would have fallen down if I tried to grab hold of it because I was so desperate looking for love. The desperation of wanting to be loved would later become a mission, to become a woman of unlimited self-esteem, and for all women and girls to fall in love with themselves fully and wholly and without reservation. And I wouldn't trade that mistake for the world. Then there was the bad, horrible boyfriend, the one I knew from the get-go, from the minute I met him, that he was not right for me. I didn't pay attention to my own voice or my own instincts. And as I sat in bumper-to-bumper traffic with a view of my personal belongings scattered on the back seat, I also had a black and blue mark stretching from my jawline to my clavicle. And I replayed the entire 5 years over and over and over again. Why didn't I listen? Why didn't I trust myself? Why didn't I turn down the volume? Not paying attention to my own voice, my own life, later led me to another mission, the desire for all women to speak up, to speak their truth, to be heard. And I wouldn't trade that mistake for anything. All the mistakes, the sexual, the financial, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, all the ones that I made, that we make, that bring us shame, that make us weep in the dark, that keep us at arm's length. The ones that we try desperately to hide, the ones that we have hidden away in cartons, the ones that are thrown up over and over again in our face. They come back to haunt us. The ones that make us feel not worthy or deserving are there for us to dig deeper, to seek and find the root of our pain, our fears, the fear of intimacy, the fear of being powerful, the fear of connecting, the fear of being abandoned or unwanted, the fear of being unloved and not liked, so we can inspire and encourage all women that they're not alone. To stand up and to stand tall for all women to fulfill their desires and passion and dreams, and to never ever abandon our our own lives. And that, I believe, is a mission that we all share, that all women emerge, awaken to their greatness. Welcome to Emerging Women. Thank you so much.